Roy, thank you very much for joining us. It's a pleasure having you, and I'd love to hear more about your book and what you've been up to. Just to get started for our audience, if you wouldn't mind saying a little bit about yourself and what you've been working on.
Grew up in Oregon. I went to Oregon State University in engineering, physics, and mathematics, which was a big mistake. That's rocket science. That means all around me are geniuses in the class. I'm the only one that isn't. And I didn't like the field. So at the end, after I went ahead and got my degree, but I interviewed with Procter & Gamble with a guy who became a lifelong friend. So I was there for 7 years. That was the apple of its day back in the 60s. My boss was from Yale and his boss was from Princeton. So the competition was pretty stiff, and I liked that. But after I was there for 7 years, I decided I'm a West Coast guy. I moved back to San Francisco, which is everybody's favorite city, I think. I thought it was just perfect for me, and took a job following kind of a principle that you start at a big company like Procter, then on a smaller company. Maybe in the end you're running your own company, or you're in a small company where you have a big voice. So I started there, and after with this company, it was a little bit smaller, and after 5 years, they did something very unethical. So I quit and joined a small New York-based company, but running the West for them. And after 18 years, they did something even worse. So I quit. I had no idea they were unethical. And that's when I was looking carefully at all areas of business and self-improvement, and found an area called core values. And because of that, I made a step where I became an entrepreneur. A friend told me, Roy, you asked me why I'm an entrepreneur. I like to make my own mistakes. And I thought, well, after 2 big ones, getting kicked in the teeth twice and having to quit, that sounded good. So I became an entrepreneur. I followed some of these new things that I learned about, including the subject of my book, the use of core values. In 11 years, I retired, having fulfilled the promise that Stephen Covey and Hiram Smith had in their books, which was, if you find your core values and you follow them in everything you do, you'll be fulfilled and have peace of mind. And I also had financial freedom thrown in. When I went to visit Hiram Smith before he died 2 years ago, he said financial freedom is something that they found from this, but they didn't put it in their books because there's other talents you need. You have to have some business talent. You have to have a little courage. You have to be able to recognize an opportunity. Not everybody can do all of that stuff, and a lot of times entrepreneurs are wrong the first couple times. Sometimes they come up and hit a home run. Sometimes they come up and hit into a double play and have to go back to the dugout. So I've been retired for almost 18 years and doing the things that I love based upon my core values. And 3 years ago, I decided I'd write a book about core values because I saw that nobody's writing about this. Nobody knows about it. It's not being discussed anywhere. If you go on any site, you won't read anything about core values except with a few rare cases. Nowadays, all of the people that are blogging are writing either about goals, goal achievement, or life hacks. And unfortunately for them, that isn't good enough. You have to have the values initially. You have to have goals that are appropriate for you. So my question is, they tell all of the readers about values. I said, how do you find, or goals, how do you set those goals? And they can't help them because we're all different. You're different from me, and I'm different from my wife. We're very different. And goals for her aren't appropriate for me. Maybe a few are. Maybe we have similar spiritual goals, but maybe she's got a creative core value, and I don't. I have another kind of core value, perhaps. So that's it. So I decided to write the only book I'll ever write, and it's out there, and it's getting some attention. We'll see where that goes. I learned long ago, the people that I talked to about the book said, Roy, don't expect to earn any money off the book because you're an unknown. It's not going to get unbelievable readership. If you want to build a company, get on a lot of podcasts, get speakers, you're not going to get called by CNN. So don't worry about that. It said you'll probably lose money. But if you want to build your business, that's fine. And I said, no, I don't want to build my business. I just want to get the idea out there. And if I don't earn a cent, that's fine. Now's the time my wife comes in and says, don't say that again. Don't say that. So, well, okay, I'm not against earning money, but I'm all set there. I just want to get the idea out.
That's great. Let's dive into the book. Let's learn a little bit about, share with us what is the big idea of the book, Core Values.
Okay. It wasn't my idea. It came from Stephen R. Covey in his 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, which may be the best-selling business book of all time, 40 million copies. And then his partner, who I think was his boss, Hiram Smith, wrote What Matters Most, The Power of Living Your Values. So I read these books along with a lot of others. And I'm still reading them, like Essentialism and Tiny Habits and stuff like that. I like reading about that stuff. But here's what they said. And part of this is my own thinking, but about 95% is theirs. There's about 360 values I've identified. Each of us has 10 to 15. Now, they didn't say that, but I've taught this at a local university for adults for 10 years without pay, just giving my. And I've never seen anybody that had any more than 10 to 20 core values. If somewhere in there, I have 11. These guys said those values are there at birth. Now, they have a spirit. They are spiritual people. They have religious beliefs, so they believe they came from this guy or woman, whoever you believe is up there. Regardless, they're fully formed by childhood. They don't change much in later life. I've had people say, well, can't you add a value? Well, I guess if you were Viktor Frankl and went to a concentration camp, that's such a severe experience, maybe you could add a value or look at things differently. But you're going to have your core values there. I think down deep inside, everybody knows that they are different and that they have different values than other people. They share some, but they're different. Unless somebody says, no, everybody has the same level of creativity, intelligence, interest in helping out, concern about the family, giving back. I don't think so. I think we're all different. And they said, if you find those 10 to 15 core values, and you live a life consistent with them, meaning every day you make decisions consistent with them. If you don't have a creativity core value, you're not learning to paint, play the piano and things like that. You're going to have a hard time with that. You'll have to use willpower to do it because it isn't part of you. It'll just be tougher. It isn't that you can't find value from it, but it's not a core value. So that's what they said. They said, if you live your life according to your core values, you'll have fulfillment and peace of mind. That's a direct quote from them. And in my book, I have maybe 60 quotes from pretty well-known people, historical people, even like Errand and some of the great philosophers like Aristotle, including current people too, that talk about this, but it's not well known. So that's the idea I got from it. And I use that idea to decide if I'm going to stay with this company where they told me to lie on a deposition for maybe a court trial. And I started getting panic attacks every night, not every night, maybe 3 or 4 times a week. I'd wake up and go, I can't breathe. I'd leap out of bed and run to the window. We're in a high rise. So I could open the window and get that fresh ocean air in San Francisco coming off the. My wife is thinking I'm dying, and I'm thinking I'm dying. I go to every kind of doctor there is. Finally go to a psychiatrist. And he says, well, Roy, tell me what's going on in your life. As soon as I start talking, he says, stop. I know exactly what your problem is. You have ethics, your partners don't. And so I used my core values to put together a spreadsheet. I thought, the acid test. Here are my 11 core values. Here's my current job. And here's being an entrepreneur. And how is each core value honored by being in that position? One of my first ones was integrity. Well, clearly, my current position wasn't honoring that. So I'd rate that as 0 or a 1. These guys, in fact, one of the senior partners, I was a junior partner, said to me, Roy, we know you're an honest man, but this is business. I said, business is outside of the core of human experience. We don't apply morals or ethics. So, and then if I'm running my own company as an entrepreneur, presumably I could have it at whatever level of integrity I wanted it. So I'd rate that a 9 or a 10. And I added all these scores up once I finished with my core values. And if you want to, I can rattle them off real quick. And there was no question I'd become an entrepreneur. So I did. I like small companies, so we kept it small, but we exceeded 8 figures, which is $10 million in about 5 years. And then 6 years later, I retired. And I went back to my psychiatrist, and he handed me a white sheet of paper, an empty one, like this, and said, Roy, that's your life now. What do you want to do? And he said, there are people that can retire and play golf and tennis and hike and paint and see sporting events. You're not one of those. You're going to have to do the things that you value. So I already knew what my core values were. So I just went, and actually in my book, I mentioned this. I had activities for every value. I wasn't trying to match them up. They just went that way. Like if you're doing give back, that could honor a spiritual core value, but it could also honor what I call a community core value. My definition of that is unique to me. It's a giving back. You could call it giving back, but and so for 17 years I've done that, and the result of that has been fulfillment. It's wonderful. I don't associate with people that are caustic or negative in any way, and I only do the things that I like. And even when I was an entrepreneur, I still had to do things that I didn't like. I had to deal with the government sometimes, taxes and rules and regulations. And every now and then you deal with a client that you really couldn't stand or was difficult to deal with. But now, no. So that's the idea.
And somebody who picks up the book, they read it, what are they going to get out of it? Is it they're going to learn how to figure out their core values, how to map them, how to apply them?
I was a failure until my mid-30s. So they'll learn, and I didn't really work on my core values until I was 53. So they'll learn that there's no excuses for them, But they'll also learn that they have 10 to 15, my book describes this, but nobody was I wasn't committing armed robbery, but I was driving drunk. I was borrowing money from women I dated. I got a car repossessed my first day on the new job in San Francisco with my boss in the car. So they'll learn how to find their 10 to 15 core values, and then they'll learn what that means and how to live their life consistent with those. And I'll give them a couple of business tools that'll have to do with a file manager and a task manager, that they could organize their files and tasks actually in files that have a name of their core values. So they see it every day. It's right in front of them. It's like some people say that are in the business of promoting something, that you have a painting or words on your desk or a little rock like I have here, never give up. Just to remind you of that kind of stuff. So they'll learn how to do that. They'll get my story too, which hopefully will give them hope. That it will be impossible for them to read my book and say, well, Roy was gifted, and so this was easy for him. They'll say, this guy's an imbecile. If he can do it, I can do it. That's the conclusion they'll make, I think. And hopefully, if they, to answer a question that you sent to me in an email, what do I wish I knew when I was 20? Well, I wish I had some indication of this. I didn't get started till I was 53 in doing this. And up until 37, 38, I would call myself a loser. I was drinking on weekends. I wasn't a drunk, but I'd go out, and because I was socially awkward, I thought, afraid of women, I'd have too much to drink. I'd get in my car and come home, drive into a bus barn at 50 miles an hour, or fall asleep on a freeway where it ended in Miami and drive through these huge billboard signs with cops coming from everywhere. Had I been arrested, my career would have been over at Procter, and that would have hurt. And losing the car. Waking up Saturday wanting to go for breakfast in Indianapolis and not finding the car, company car. So this is not good. I'm going to have to tell Procter on Monday, I've lost the car. Adding helpfully while out drinking on Friday night, So I was due to make some changes, and probably meeting my wife to be in San Francisco started that ball rolling, because she was completely different, and she didn't try to make me over, but the example of her helped. So yeah, I'd like to be a little more advanced. I'd like to be like a Ryan Holiday or any of those guys that are in their 20s. They seem to know. But on the other hand, maybe I'm one of those guys that has to go through all that stuff. Maybe this guy up here has a plan, That plan started at 53. Maybe I had to get hit over the head by the company trying to cheat me and get me to lie, and I had to have panic attacks where I thought I was going to die one night.
Just one more question, if you wouldn't mind sharing your favorite business book besides your own?
Well, I've named it already. I looked at that question this morning, and I think The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People had so much meat in it by Stephen Covey. 40 million copies sold. And I'm going to add one, his partner. They kind of fit together, Hiram Smith's What Matters Most. These books were written about 30 years ago. But still, The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, I see quoted all the time. So I'm a big fan of Stephen Covey. And that's where I got the idea. They developed the whole concept of core values. I just put a little meat on the bones and flesh on it. They taught it around the world, and then they died or passed away, retired, and it stopped being taught. So it isn't on the medium.com and the blogs or any place else that I see. LinkedIn, occasionally, but very rarely. And one guy wrote a book a few months ago about this. He's a well-known guy, blogger, and he said, you can pick your core values from outside yourself. I'm loath to be too critical. I'm going to say he's wrong about that. You don't pick them from outside. If you don't have a core value of integrity, you can't say, I want to have integrity. That's going to be my core value. That isn't going to work. If you don't have a value of creativity, yes, you could paint and so on, but you're going to have a problem. Unlike the guy that has that as a value, or woman who would find it easy to do, and would getting up every morning and say, great, I can paint, I can write some stuff for the piano. You're going to have to struggle and use willpower, which is a very unreliable ally. It disappears every day at the end of the day. Goes out for a smoke or something. It's not around. So those books are what I like.
I appreciate it. Thank you very much for sharing and for bringing to the forefront the importance of core values for us.
You're welcome.